Journey to the City of the King, an adaptation of John Bunyan's Pilgrim's Progress. Part 3. The King's Armour. He was free, really free. He felt so much better. He felt so light. He was sure he was floating. He had to keep looking down at his feet to make sure he was not up in the air. "What a king!" he shouted, and his heart was filled with joy when he thought about the cross. Of course, he could make much quicker progress now. He was so happy. He felt so clean. He had his roll of assurance of entry into the beautiful city. Then guess what he saw? Well, it was a jolly good thing he was feeling so light, because in front of him was a great, big, steep, rocky hill called Difficulty. Phew, he thought to himself. Then he saw two other paths, one leading around the mountain to the left and the other leading around the mountain to the right. Both were level and easy to the feet, one having soft grass and the other by the side of a cool stream. But when he looked at the signpost, it said, "Beautiful city, by way of the Hill of Difficulty." Well, at least travelling on the King's Road is full of adventure, and no one said it would be easy, so here goes. At first he was singing and climbing, but when he ran out of puff, he could only whistle and climb. And then he ran out of more puff, and could only manage a half-hearted hum as he climbed. And in the end he gave up all noises except puffing as he pulled himself up with his hands, cutting his knees on sharp rocks. The hill seemed to get steeper and steeper. "I must go on," he panted. "I must go on." Then he heard two loud cries, one on the right and one on the left. And when he looked, he saw that two men who had taken the easy road around the mountain had been killed, one by a vicious bear, who took him off to his den, and the other by falling into a great hole in the earth. The easy ways are not as easy in the end, he thought to himself. About 3/4 of the way up the hill, he pulled himself over a large boulder, and there before his eyes was a beautiful green, flat, cool-looking place. The grass was so gentle to his feet, he threw himself on the ground and stretched out and rolled around. This was a place built by the order of the king, so that those travelling to the beautiful city might have a little rest before they carried on. Christian noticed that there was a seat shaded by a tree, and there he lay down, resting his legs for a while. He got out his roll of assurance that had been given to him to have a read, but instead of reading it, he just lay it down beside him and thought he would just close his eyes for a few minutes. Before he knew it, he was asleep. In fact, he did not wake up until late afternoon. This place was meant for rest, but not for sleep. He only woke up because he dreamt he'd heard a voice saying, "Wake up, you sluggard, go to the ant." And then he felt something tickling him on his hands, and he opened his eyes and saw an ant running along, busy as ants always are. He realised that he'd been very lazy, and jumped up immediately and walked as fast as he could to the top of the hill. Just as he reached the top, he met two men running towards him. Their faces were white with fear. Their whole bodies were trembling. "What's the matter?" Christian puffed. "You're going the wrong way." The older one was called Timid. "We're going to the city of the king," he said, "and we climbed this terrible hill, but just over there we saw... Then the younger one, called Mistrust, cried out, "We saw lions waiting to tear us to pieces." Well, the fright on their faces made Christian afraid too. Their mouths were massive, and you could see their teeth. They were just waiting to... Oh! cried Timid. And at that, the two of them ran down the hill shouting, Run for your life! Well, it was enough to make anyone frightened, and Christian's knees began to knock together, and his teeth began to chatter. He was like a wobbly jelly. I'll take a look at my roll of assurance, he thought. That might give me some courage. Now, where did I put it? Where is it? Oh, it must be in my other pocket. Oh no, it's not there either. Then the awful thought came over him. Oh, I've left it under the tree where I was sleeping. Oh, how careless of me. He had been very careless with the precious gift from the king. Tears began to roll down his face as he walked back to get his roll of assurance. It was getting dark by the time he reached the top of the hill again. He started to think about the lions. I wonder if they prowl at night, he thought. But he held on to his roll and walked as quickly as he could. Just as the light became very dim, he saw a large building in the distance. It was a beautiful-looking palace, and the road led straight to it. As he walked, he noticed that the road got narrower and narrower. Then, almost at the palace, guess what he saw? 2 enormous lions lying each side of the road. They were every bit as fierce as Timid and Mistrust had said. The narrow road ran straight between the 2 lions, and he thought that if he was to walk between them, surely they would pounce on him and eat him. But there was no other way. Now there was a doorkeeper called Watchful. He saw Christian coming, and he saw how frightened he was, and so he called out, Don't be afraid. Hold on to your assurance and keep to the middle of the path. The lions are chained. If you keep to the middle, they won't be able to reach you. So Christian held on to his assurance and walked as quickly as he could. He got through without a scratch, although the lion's roar was still ringing in his ears. Watchful welcomed him to the palace, although he was quite surprised that Christian was so late. The next day, Christian was taken to the armoury. What a splendid place that was! There were all sorts of armour, big and small. Some of this armour, said Watchful, is for you, made especially for you, and it will fit you perfectly. But how did you know I was coming? Asked Christian. Ah, said Watchful, the king knows all, and that's why you must trust him. Whatever you meet on the way, just trust him. Don't leave the road. You'll get through if you use this armour. Then he gave Christian a leather belt, strong and firm, called the Belt of Truth. Buckle this around your waist and keep this sword with it. This is the sword of the king's word. It's a strong and powerful sword, and it can beat off the fiercest enemy. Then he gave him a very bright, shining helmet, the helmet of salvation, and the shining shield of faith, and on both of them was the emblem of the cross. Oh, you must put this on, said Watchful. This body armour will protect your heart from unclean things. And finally Christian put on some strong shoes called the Shoes of Peace. Now every side of you is protected, except your back, said Watchful. So when you're confronted by an enemy, stand firm and face him. Christian looked like a fine soldier, ready for anything. The armour fitted him perfectly. Well, it would, of course. It was made by the king especially for him. Go on, off you go, said Watchful. Make haste and keep to the road. Remember to hold up your shield of faith when the fiery darts are thrown at you. That will put them out.